Welcome to the Octopod. I'm Kyle Davis, head of the Office of the CTO. Join us as we dive into the latest technologies and trends shaping business. Whether you're a tech enthusiast, a business leader, or just looking to stay ahead in the digital age, this podcast is for you. Let's unlock opportunities with technology together. Let's jump in.
Welcome everyone to a special edition of my Hybrid Trends podcast series with our partners from Microsoft. We've been talking about this concept of Cloud Beyond IaaS and how we can drive cost optimization into your environment. We started with 4 episodes introducing the core concept of cost optimization and our 3 main conversations around hybrid cloud, app modernization, and the data in AI. In this session, we are now diving into that topic of hybrid cloud, and I'm really excited to be joined by Christophe from Microsoft and Jake from our Microsoft team. Guys, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, hi, Jake Walsh, Senior Solution Architect here at CDW in our Microsoft practice.
Hello, Christophe. I'm the lead for Azure StackHCI and Azure Local for the EMEA region at Microsoft.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. So in this session, we're going to really dive into some of the use cases and capabilities for the new Azure Local platform that we introduced in the previous episode, and really dive into, what value can customers get from that. And then in part 3, we're going to really dive into the edge use cases and the vertical requirements as well. So I guess there's a couple of really high-level themes here for people to look out for. One is around what we're helping with from a data and virtual machines perspective. What are we helping for from accessing that data through things like VDI services with AVD, and also a bit of chat about where does that play into the security landscape as well from a customer's perspective. But I guess, Jake, coming to you first from that first core use case around, there's still a lot of data and a lot of virtual machines running on-prem. They're there for a reason in a lot of cases. There's lots of reasons, but what are you seeing in your conversations around customers wanting to modernize their data centers, move to true private cloud operating models?
So one of the big trends I'm seeing is customers wanting to standardize on a specific platform. And for example, if they're on a bit of a cloud journey where they're considering cloud for the right workloads, they're also looking at hybrid, via StackHCI, local for other workloads. What this is doing is enabling them to do that without having to make a commitment to a certain platform that perhaps doesn't quite fit all of their use cases. They can put the right workload in the right place on the right solution for that specific workload. It's kind of removing some of the blockers perhaps we've previously seen. It's enabling more transformation and just giving customers more opportunity to transform, all underpinned by a commonality, that common platform underneath via Arc to give them that management and control.
Yes, there really is that Azure Anywhere concept coming to life from that side of it. And Christophe, what are you seeing in this sort of hypervisor market? There's been a lot of upheaval in certain vendors over the last 12 months. Are you seeing that drive conversations with your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. We see that this hypervisor market has changed dramatically in, let's say, 2 years. The leaders have taken decision that has led customers to look for alternatives, and they came to Microsoft and said, explain me what you have. And indeed, we have a solution. We have alternatives to what they have today. If they need just to spin up VMs, then we have an hypervisor that can run VMs, but it can do much more. Today they are on VMs, but some of their departments are innovating with Kubernetes, that they can run Kubernetes on top. If they want to run the PaaS services, we have a number of PaaS services that can run also on that platform. And in the end, it's a matter of architecting all that with some cloud processes. So how do you deploy those VM at scale using templates, using infrastructure as code? And this is part of the equation. Also, it's not only about running the VM, it's about making sure they run with a compliance with the operational rules and security rules of the organization. All that is possible with Azure Local, and we have all the functions to help customers enforce those rules and facilitate and execute those deployments at scale.
So it's really that consistency then. If you create a template, you create an infrastructure code pipeline, and you can then deploy that anywhere, realistically, whether it's Azure Public, Azure Local. It's that consistency of operations, and therefore you get that standardization, you get the efficiency, you get the consistency, you get the security that comes with that as well from a compliance perspective.
And that goes beyond just the technology. from a business standpoint, it makes business processes more straightforward. It makes hiring and retaining staff more straightforward. It makes training staff more straightforward because it is one platform, because it is one ecosystem. It's not, this person looks after that system because that's all they do. This person looks after that. You can have one team looking after a common platform as an example.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess for those that have followed this for a while, we obviously know the evolution's come out of Server OS. We've been through Hyper-V, we've been into StackHCI, now Azure Local as the name for all of this. What, Jake, do you see from a technology evolution? Because people will look at this and go, well, I knew this in 2015 when I looked at it last time. I mean, we're 9 years ago there. 2016's 8 years ago now. So have we seen the technology evolve to be enterprise class?
Yes, it has. And I think it's very easy to sort of, to sit here and say, Windows Server is Windows Server, but it really isn't. The number of changes, the number of benefits, the number of enhancements that have progressed, from perhaps taking the 2016 example, years to, what StackHCI and now Azure Local is as an operating system and as an operating method as well. There have been a huge number of changes that really sort of, from perhaps that more enterprise standpoint and that scale standpoint now, this really does stack up against perhaps products previously you wouldn't have considered it against.
Yeah, so I think, Christophe, you historically talked about where StackHCI fits as more as an edge use case, smaller data centers, etc. Do you see now unlocking them larger core data center use cases as part of the future for Azure Local?
Exactly. This is the vision and this is the roadmap. So it's more than a vision, actually, because we have a plan to release this, let's say, data center grade platform. So we come from a data center platform that was, let's say, limited in terms of scale, 16 nodes maximum, able to go down to one single node, now able to scale up to 192 nodes. So that means that we take the customer where they are, and we probably have the solution for their next step. It's about discussing with Microsoft, with CDW, with the vendors, and say, okay, what is your strategy? Let's look at the capability of the solution. We probably have it in our portfolio in terms of scale, in terms of capabilities.
Yeah. And from a sort of license consumption perspective, I mean, the message we're getting here is this is an Azure service. So I assume that customer is going to be able to utilize that committed spend with Microsoft, whether it's in Azure Public or Azure Local, and get that sort of consistency of benefits. You've talked about containers. Do we also extend that into things like extended security rights? So there's a lot of benefits there for customers.
Yes, we have made Azure Local competitive so that customer can keep on innovating. What does that mean? That means that you can pay Azure Local as an Azure service, pay as you go, or as part of your enterprise agreement or MAC agreement with Microsoft. So your contract with Microsoft, and you can consume Azure Local through that contract. We have integrated the Kubernetes layer into that pricing. So now you have one single price, not only for the compute part, but also for the Kubernetes part. And it's very competitive. Secondly, if you have Windows Server data center plus software assurance, this price for Azure Local goes down to zero. That means that gives you the space to innovate, have more compute power, have more services, have more innovation. Finally, if you don't have that contract with Microsoft and you want to purchase a license for the lifetime of your hardware, then you can consume Azure Local through that perpetual license that you can procure from your hardware vendor. So we have made that flexible enough so that you find your way of consuming Azure Local, and you have a way to make economies of scales that are significant. On top of that, Rob, you mentioned extended security update. So we fight against obsolescence, but we understand that sometimes it's not easy to migrate an application to the next version. So we understand that you will stay for some VMs on Windows Server 2012 and soon on Windows Server 2016. To protect those VMs, we allow you to get extended security update for 4 years for free on Azure Local. So we give you all the tools to keep on innovating while maintaining your legacy application on the same platform. You don't need two platforms, one single platform for the legacy and for the innovation.
Fantastic. Just the flexibility there and the choice is great. And I think I also understand that you can pick your hardware vendor of choice to run this as well. And there's a lot of great innovation coming from our OEM partners out there to bring to these sort of unified stacks and join the support, etc. So there'll be a lot of choice and flexibility both from the Microsoft side and from the OEM side to build the right version of Azure Local for you as an organization. So that's fantastic. So with our platform, we can run it anywhere. We can run any workload. We can store data on there. We can run VMs on there. We can build containerized applications on the platform. We can run it in the public cloud. We can run it in any data center or location of choice. But Jake, sometimes we need to access that information. Them applications aren't always web enabled. They don't always work over the internet. And we know that the general trend is that we're issuing a laptop device to most users now. They're generally consuming cloud-based services that have been optimized to run over the public internet, which means VDI services aren't as prevalent as they used to be in the market. But Microsoft have put a lot of investment into AVD as a product. It still has some fantastic use cases. And are you seeing now that the fact that we've got Azure Local and the fact that we can run AVD on top of that now, unlocking some new use cases for customers?
Without a doubt, yeah. So I mean, in particular, two verticals that I think will benefit from that massively are one, medical, where perhaps there's machinery, imaging, x-rays, that sort of stuff, where a person working on that piece of equipment, machinery, whatever it may need to be, needs a very low latency connection, so they can work on their terminal and access that as if it was a local native experience, and this will open the door to do that. The other is obviously manufacturing. That's another huge use case where perhaps you've got a VDI session being used to control a piece of machinery or a part of a process. And being able to put pockets of, use the phrase pockets of VDI, because previously VDI was kind of this huge deployment that was kind of only ever in one place really where it needed to be. But actually now with this solution, I can put those use cases that do require that local connectivity, local devices, access to machinery in the right location on the right platform, but also I can use AVD in Azure natively for those that don't need that. So I get this blended best of both worlds approach.
And in the same way that we've got this sort of consistent operations from an Agile perspective, is that the same outcome from an AVD perspective then? So, or have I got this sort of massive amount of on-prem complexity to deal with and this lovely consumption service in the cloud, or is that unified as well?
That's unified as well. So just to give you a practical example of that, if you had a local deployment, you would deploy the AVD session host in exactly the same way you would via the portal onto that local deployment. So same experience, same management, same administration experience for whoever is looking after that environment.
And from an access point, do you need to deploy sort of complicated firewall capabilities, etc., or is traffic routed through the Azure network, etc., to make it nice and simple?
Yeah, nothing particularly complicated. There is a published list of URLs, ports that need to be accessible. So that's for the brokering services to take place. From that point forward, everything else is local.
Cool. So dead simple deployment, consumption, and then that ability to scale it wherever you need it from that side. And I guess from your point, Christophe, there we've got these slightly smaller capabilities now within Azure Local, means that we can, if we only need 20 or 30 desktops in a location, we're not sort of constrained by minimum cluster sizes, etc.
Absolutely, we have a variety of footprint, let's say, of configurations, so that we can adapt to the customer context. So we can have small hardware for few desktops, and we can have large deployment for thousands of employees. So it's just a matter of sizing and designing the architecture according to the needs. So it's easy. As Jake said, most of the components are in the cloud. What remains on-prem is the session host, or where the application is hosted. So that limits the complexity of the solution overall.
And if we think about what we might be replacing there, third-party VDI service, disparate hardware platform to run that on, disparate control layer to run that from, multiple different licensing modes, possibly third-party product needed to make that all function. Now we're saying to customers, well, they've already got an M365 license, so they're likely entitled to AVD. They've already got a server data center with software assurance, so they're probably already licensed for Azure Local now. So all they need to do is add some hardware and away they go. The cost consolidation, we think about the theme of this series around cost optimization, the cost reduction in removing all them individual components and all them different people to one platform sounds like a real fantastic piece of innovation that Microsoft have brought together there. I'm really quite excited to see how customers can adopt that into the future.
Yes, and we talk about the cost of the solution. We talk about the cost of managing the solution, so the total cost of ownership. And also I would remind that AVD is the only solution of the market offering multi-session. And that's another option to reduce the cost, because instead of having one VM per user, you will host multiple users on one single VM, and since it's charged by the size of the VM, then you reduce the overall cost of the solution, and that can be significant.
Yeah, and I think it's important that multi-session is Windows 11 based rather than Server OS based as well. So we're getting all the same compatibility from an application perspective. We can manage one image, one tool set, one set of agents, all that sort of stuff, rather than what we've done historically with multi-session VDI is had to manage it on Server OS. And the challenges that has, we've always had to manage them challenges, but they go away with multi-session Windows 11. So that's definitely important. Two things I wanted to finish this session on really then. So the first one is security, and the second one is GPU. So we're going to do the second one first because it's probably the easy one. And historically, I think a lot of people haven't thought about Hyper-V, etc., being a platform to run GPUs through. But Azure Local is GPU supported, Christophe. Do we have that option to run GPUs locally for them AI alerts that we want to execute at the edge?
Yes, we have thought Azure Local to be a platform that supports AI and supports VDI. Both of these use cases are heavy GPU consumers. So we have a variety of GPUs. Our hardware vendors keep on innovating and deploy the latest generation of NVIDIA GPU. We might have other version of GPU that I don't know, but we keep on being at the edge in terms of having GPUs in the platform. We talk also about partitioning GPUs, GPU live migration. So there is a number of functions that comes with the hardware. It's not only having the GPU card, it's how you connect those GPUs to the applications that matters. And with the latest version of Hyper-V that is embedded into Azure Local, we have a number of functions that allows you to use GPUs efficiently and allocate them to the right applications.
Excellent, great. Well, that's the sort of innovation that I was hoping to see. So let's finish this off then, Christophe. I know this is a topic that's close to your heart, but if we're going to start running all this stuff locally, security is a massive concern for our customers. And what are Microsoft doing in that space generally, and more specifically in the area that you look after around Azure Local, etc.?
Indeed, Rob, that is a key point. Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, used to say that security is job number one at Microsoft, and that is reflected in all our product range. On Azure StackHCI, you can host sensitive data, and we are conscious that security is top of our customers' mind. So for that, we have taken the model that we inherit from Azure. It's a layered model where we secure every layer of the solution, starting with the workloads. Secured with Defender, for instance, we can have Defender for VM, for servers. We can have Defender for Kubernetes. We can have Defender for databases, for instance. Then we go down a layer where we can secure the administration of the platform. Let's say, just giving an example like just-in-time, it's a way to allocate rights to an administrator for the time of the action, and then we'll remove that right. It's very convenient, but it secures the way administrator can orchestrate the platform. Then we'll go down to encryption of the data, encryption at rest, data and transfer will be encrypted. And then we go down even into the security in the silicon itself. And that is why you have to select the hardware from a specific catalog on Azure StackHCI, because in this hardware, we have the components that are able to deliver the level of security and the level of performance that is required for such a solution. So secured core is a solution. Trusted launch VMs is another solution that use hardware components to sign, for instance, the code in the silicon itself before executing it in a firmware and a BIOS. So very important to have this comprehensive security approach, all that connected to the cloud. So when you have a security breach, you have an alert, you can consolidate all those alerts in Sentinel, for instance, or another CM that you would have. It's an open platform. So once you have these alerts, then you can take the remediation action. It could be also recommended by the platform itself, saying, look, you don't have the anti-malware on those VMs, or you should update those certificates. All that helps you also maintain the security of your platform on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. I love the multi-layered approach there as well. So that sort of defense in depth and think about all the different elements that could be part of that sort of attack vector is really important. So great. So we have a secure platform, we have a scalable platform, we have consistent operations, we have lots of different use cases from VMs to VDI to containers to AI that we can run across this platform. I guess the closing piece then for the use cases is, where do people start this journey? And maybe, Jake, we start with yourself. I mean, what's that next step that you would ask people to do after listening to this?
I think, and this is probably me putting my sort of technical background hat on a little bit, but POCs, testing, evaluations, that's really important, because in that process you will then gain buy-in from those that will be looking after the solution, understanding its benefits, understanding what it brings to a business, and things like talking to specific hardware vendors you're already working with to get demo units, to get loan hardware. Things like the Jumpstart HCI box allows you to run a version of StackHCI local in Azure, so you can get hands-on, you can start testing out some of the concepts, and that's really good from a training perspective. And those are the types of routes I would go down, really.
Cool. And Christophe, what would you give as your advice to people that listen to this as to how to get started with this conversation?
Yes, I'm aligned with Jake. I would say testing the solution is the best way to understand the breadth of its capabilities. The question is, how do we test? So Jake proposed the jump box, which is an easy way of testing without deploying hardware. Now, if we want to go one step further, I would recommend to work with someone like CDW that has the expertise, that has eventually the infrastructure. And Rob, you can explain us what we can do with CDW. And so that you can define really precisely the use cases that you want to evaluate and learn from that experience. So maybe, Rob, you can explain how we can do that with CDW.
Yeah, cheers, guys. I think, what we've been evolving our platforms and our capabilities over the last few years, and we've been running our own infrastructure as a service platform, our own private cloud for the last decade, but we've evolved that over the last few years now to include the StackHCI products. We have demo nodes in our data center ready to go if customers want to try them. They're there ready to use them. Also, we've evolved into what we've called Service Works Local, which is our ability now to deploy StackHCI as a service into a customer's location. So if they don't want to even operate the hardware layer at all and just consume Azure Local as a service, we've got that as a stood-up service with a decade's worth of operational experience that sits behind it. So we can really deliver that hybrid cloud option with that end-to-end managed service that's wrapped around it, and let our customers just get on with innovation, building apps, getting value from data and doing the stuff that's going to help them grow their business, really. So, guys, thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And I've been Rob Sims, Chief Technologist for CDW.
I've been Jake Walsh, Senior Solution Architect in CDW's Microsoft practice.
And Christophe was your local lead.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.
Tuning into today's episode. Be sure to check out the back catalogue for more great insights. Don't forget to subscribe via your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. And if you have a topic you want us to cover, feel free to reach out. Catch you next time.